Hey everybody, welcome to another comic book review. In this video, I'll be talking about Compendium 3 of Bill Willingham's Fables. This volume picks up where the second compendium left off. So, Mr. Dark is now out of his box. He's kind of on the loose. And his power is stretching to the farm and basically all across wherever the Fables are inhabiting, because since Mr. Dark took over Fabletown, the old New York location of Fabletown, his power has been spreading, and the characters that exist in the fairy tale universe, they're not liking what's building up with Mr. Dark, and they're very quickly realizing that they're going to have to put a stop to him sooner or later. He's basically kind of becoming like a second version of the adversary, and he is incredibly dangerous, if not even more dangerous than the adversary was. So the book starts off with the Great Fables crossover, as it's called, and it kind of it sort of takes a break from like the main story, which honestly, if I'm being completely honest about Fables, that's like my number one gripe with Fables, the series, is whenever you have something really cool going with one of the characters and then the narrative just kind of stops to focus on something else, and you have a whole series of issues, the Great Fables crossover, they call them, and it's all connected with the Jack of Fables series, which is also co-written by Bill Willingham. And it crosses over with that series, and, there's a mini-series specifically for the Great Fables crossover called The Literals, and it crosses over with that too. So, right off the bat, if you're not reading Jack of Fables in addition to Fables, this little arc could be kind of confusing. But, I picked it up well enough. And so it kind of got things off to a rocky start for me with this compendium. But then after that is where it gets really, really good. Frau Totenkinder, who was kind of one of the higher up witches, from the 13th floor, which is basically a group of like very magical sorcerers with great power that exist in Fabletown on the 13th floor of the main building. So Frau Totenkinder goes off in an effort to fight Mr. Dark on her own. She challenges him to a duel, and she becomes like a younger version of herself called Bellflower. And basically, she does challenge Mr. Dark to a duel, and it's very, very cool. And it's definitely one of the highlight moments of this compendium. That moment was awesome. Seeing her fight Mr. Dark was great. Another thing I really liked about this compendium is the fact that Mrs. Spratt, the local nurse, kind of the right-hand woman to Dr. Swinehart, the main doctor in town, she gets really scolded by Snow White, because Mrs. Spratt was a character that I kind of despised right from the get-go, from her beginning, because ever since What Happened to Boy Blue, which I'm going to try my best not to spoil anything, but as it gets later on in the series, it's kind of hard not to spoil some things that happened early on. So my apologies if I do end up spoiling anything, but I'll try my best not to. So something happened to Boy Blue early on in one of the earlier compendiums, and basically Mrs. Spratt took no responsibility for it. She kept saying, there's nothing to worry about. Dr. Swinehart is the best doctor in town. And whenever things happen, she basically says, yeah, it's not my fault. It's not the doctor's fault. It's just, the patient's fault that this happened. And she causes a lot of grief for a lot of the residents of Fabletown. And Snow White, there's this incredible moment in this compendium where Snow White calls her out. And she's like, look, you're kind of a terrible person. And you're like really mean to everybody. And she just serves it to her. And it's great. And it's a moment that I had been waiting to see coming for a long time. And so finally getting it was very satisfying. Speaking of satisfying moments, there's an incredible scene in here involving Bigby's dad, the North Wind. They call him Mr. North. He very, very quickly became one of my favorite characters. I was kind of unsure what to think of him for a while, but something happens in this compendium that just skyrocketed him to the top of my favorite characters list for this series. Honestly, he's right up there with King Ambrose, Flycatcher, in terms of my favorite characters in this series. As far as the art goes, it's spectacular all around. I think it's wonderful. Mark Buckingham especially, he does the majority of the art for this series, but all of his art is beautiful. The colors are, as I said in the previous two Fables Compendium reviews that I made, the colors are very bright, they're vibrant, and it's just very beautiful visually to look at. And that makes, even the moments where the storytelling is a little convoluted, that makes those moments, the art makes those moments satisfying and readable because it's just so good to look at. And, the art just kind of pops off the page and you get these beautiful action scenes and just landscapes and the way the characters are designed and drawn, and it's really cool. One other thing that I kind of love about this was, and this is going to be a spoiler for the second compendium of Fables. So the adversary, the giant puppet adversary from the second Fables Compendium, dies in that one. And the death of the adversary felt very anticlimactic because of the way that the panels were laid out on the page. The layout for the fight sequence that ended in the adversary's death, it felt very anticlimactic. So there's a scene in this book where it's kind of building up to this thing, and it makes it seem like the Fables kill Mr. Dark very, very easily. And as soon as it happened, I set the book down and I said to myself, you gotta be kidding me. 2 anticlimactic villain deaths in a row. And then it does this really cool bait and switch where it switches things around, and it really made me kind of chuckle and love what just happened, because I don't know, something tells me that might have been a complaint that other readers may have had with the way the adversary situation was handled. So it was just, I don't know, it put a smile on my face, and I thought it was really cool. Because it made me think one thing at first, and then something happens where, if you read it, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. But something happens where it kind of just switches up on you, and Bill Willingham pulls this trick where he makes things seem different than what actually happened, and it's great. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Fables Compendium 3. Look forward to the review of the 4th and final Fables Compendium coming up soon. Thank you as always for watching, and have a wonderful day.